So we also do lots of things, with the ringing of the bell. Many of the things we do are results of simple conditioning. In hypnosis, conditioning is 90% of the work. So if I were to hypnotize you, I have to do a good job of conditioning you. Part of the things I must do is observe the subject's defenses, which means if you are my subject and I am a hypnotherapist, I must observe your defenses. Now the defenses may be verbal or non-verbal. Verbal defense will be something like, try to hypnotize me. I don't think you can. That's a verbal defense. Non-verbal defense is you come and sit down in my office with legs crossed and arms crossed like that. This is a very tense defensive posture. So if I observe this, I know that you are still not ready for getting hypnotized. So observe the subject's defenses. Second thing, make the subject relate, make him identify with what you are saying, because hypnosis, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing more than communication techniques worked to their glistening smoothness. Hypnosis is nothing more than communication techniques worked to their glistening smoothness. Any good public speaker is for all essential purposes a hypnotist. That's why we say Gandhiji hypnotized the audience. It was a mass hypnosis. When Nehruji spoke, audience sat mesmerized. What does it mean? That John F. Kennedy, right? What does it mean? That they succeeded in getting the attention of the audience. So they were not operating at the base of the triangle. They were operating at a complete state of concentration and listening to what was said to them with full attention, or rapt attention. So it's communication in that sense. Now, relate the subject, or I'd make him identify, which means if a person comes from village to me for treatment and I say, imagine you are standing on an Empire State Building. And he said, what are you talking about? He cannot identify with that image. So it's very essential when I communicate to the person that I'm aware of his background, his language, his vernacular even. That helps. Then explain the phenomenon of hypnosis. I have to explain to him because he might have wrong expectations. Many people come out of hypnosis and they say, oh, I wasn't under. And you ask them, why do you think? He said, I heard you. And you ask them a question, if you don't hear me, how am I going to give you a suggestion? They said, that's true, never thought of that. So I mean, this is it. Because they have some funny idea that they will be knocked unconscious when they are under hypnosis. They don't know that it is a very aware state. That you are fully aware throughout the state of hypnosis, or throughout hypnotic state, throughout that state. While you are under hypnosis, you are fully aware of what is happening around you. You even may be more aware of it, more acutely aware of it. You see? So, the point is that you must explain to the subject what it is and what it is not, and remove his misconceptions about hypnosis. And people have hundreds and thousands of misconceptions about what it is. I've listed some of them for you in topic 4, which will go over them. So you must remove them. Otherwise, they will become barriers in the process. Then you test the subject's hypnotizability. Now, you are here to learn self-hypnosis. So basically, you will not need to know about conditioning tests, but I'm going to demonstrate 2 of them in any case, just to point out something. Conditioning tests or hypnotizability tests are devised, 1, to establish rapport with the subject, to open up channels of communication. That's the one purpose. 2, to find out how susceptible the subject is to your suggestion. See, my contention is every one of us is suggestible to a degree. That, however, does not mean that all of you will accept my suggestions. You may not like my hairstyle. You may not like me wearing belt on my kurta for the microphone purposes. You may not like the way I talk. There are 1,001 things which will be barriers for you to accept suggestion from me. Huh? So it is your job, if you are communicating with somebody, to find out what are those barriers and what can you do to remove them for better communication. Once I was lecturing in California. It was a public lecture, some 600 people. And I said everybody is suggestible to a degree. Now, I've been in public speaking business for over 25 years, and I know one thing. No matter what the speaker says, where he says, there is always somebody in the audience, in any audience in the world, whose full-time job is to disagree with the speaker. He's there for that obvious purpose, is to disagree with the speaker. We call, in public speaking, we have a term for it, rebuttal instinct. Those are the people with rebuttal instinct. So this man, when I say everybody is suggestible, this man in the back, he jumped up and he says, I'm not suggestible. So I knew the type. I also knew that these people are very emotional when they are like that. And I know one more thing, emotions hypnotize you. When you are emotional, you are already highly suggestible. Any emotion. Because when you are emotional, look at this, at the triangle, when you are angry, you are operating at the tip of the triangle. Is that correct? When you are surprised, you are here. When you are confused, you are operating here. When you are grief-struck, you are also highly suggestible. Somebody dies in the family, one Brahmin will come and say, according to the Shastras, the religious books, you must feed 500 Brahmins in order to send your father's soul to heaven. You know, because he knows this is the time you will take the suggestions. 500 Brahmins, you cannot afford 5. But then he will say, oh, you mean you do not want your father's soul to go to heaven? As if it is going to go to hell anyway. You know, that's decided. You know. So at that time you are highly suggestible. So you will go into debt to send your father's soul to heaven. Because when you are in any Indian movie, Hindi films, you know, when somebody dies, that's when the villain makes his entry. Are behan ji, सुनकर बहुत दुख हुआ. आपकी मैं कोई सेवा कर सकूं तो मैं सोचूंगा बहन के घर जाके भांजे का Prem Chopra will enter. That's the time he makes his entry. Because at that time he knows the lady is highly suggestible. Make sense? So what I want to give you is a little bonus. Remember, any time you are in any emotional state, keep away from the people whom you know to be harmful to you. You know, because at that time your judgment is not pure, is impaired. At that time your judgment is impaired. So if you know some people who are not good for you, this is the time, emotional state or emotional time, particularly and specifically keep away from those people. Because this is the time they are most likely to succeed. Are you with me? All right. Now, so this time when he said that I'm not suggestible, I knew that he was very emotional about it. And I wanted to even make him more emotional because that way I make him more suggestible. I said, are you sure? He said, of course I'm sure. I said, can you prove it? He said, yes. I said, come over here. I didn't even give him time to think. So he said, sure, I'm coming. He ran from the back. I said, sit down on this chair. So he sat down. I said, that is 2 suggestions you accepted. Come over here and sit down on this chair. He scratched his head. That's true. Never thought of it. We all do this. We are all suggestible. Let me tell you, it cannot be otherwise. We are brought up from day one or even before day one on suggestions. Right the day the child is born, if it's a girl, you touch her differently than if it's a boy. Is that correct? Is that right or not? You know, girl is touched differently, Lakshmi, you know, which is a euphemism in India for bad news. So Lakshmi, you know. So that's why they're always doing research on how to produce boys. You know. Now they almost succeeded. You know, it's quite a good thing you know that? To separate the X and the Y chromosomes and then artificially inject the Y chromosomes of male into the woman. So, you know, boy will be born. Anyhow, so the point is, a boy is touched differently. You know, he's going to be the engineer that will build dams that break. You know. At the age of 3, the girl gets a ready-made doll to play with. The boy gets a mechano set. Is that right or not? If you look at so-called women's magazines in India, get this, in India, they will have an article about women's liberation on one page, and on the next page, an ad about a cigarette with a macho man smoking a cigarette and a woman with innocuous smile leaning on the guy's shoulder. Same payment. That's hypocrisy. Suggestion. These are all advertising people bombard us with suggestion day in and day out. We are brought up on suggestions. Parents give us suggestions. Teachers give us suggestions. There is no escape, believe me. So I want you to know more about suggestions, so if you need be, you can defend yourself and you don't get manipulated by it. Does it make sense? I already told you one thing. When you are emotional, keep away from harmful people. That's one thing. Second thing, by knowing during this course how the suggestions work, you know what somebody is trying to do to you. All right? So, now the conditioning tests are devised then, to come back to the conditioning tests, to find out, one, to establish rapport or to open up channels of communication with the subject, two, to find out how susceptible that person is to your suggestion. So I'm going to demonstrate 2 conditioning tests for you. What I want you to be aware of is the complexities of communication process. We talk with people, we listen to people day in and day out, but we don't know how to do it effectively. Unfortunately, communication problems are rampant in every situation simply because people are not aware of the complexities of it, nor are they ever taught anything about communication. You're taught how to read and write, but never to communicate. Schools do a lousy job of it. Colleges do worse. And as a result, after getting a degree and after working somewhere, you realize you got a communication problem. So the point is, people don't listen carefully, they don't observe carefully, which are important parts of the process of communication. So while I give the first test to one of you, for the rest of you, it's a test in listening and observation, and see how good or bad you are. Are you ready? Okay. For the rest of you, listening and observation. For one of you, it's a test, conditioning test. I need a volunteer. Somebody please come. Anybody? Okay, come. Right. What do I call you? Ashutosh. Ashutosh, please face me. Extend your arms in front of you, both of your arms. That's right. Parallel to the ground. Huh? Perfect. Okay, I want you to move this side, please. Do the same thing. Okay, Ashutosh, I want you to close your eyes and open them when I tell you to. All right, so close your eyes. And as your eyes are closed, I want you to imagine a very, very heavy weight is tied to your right arm, which is bringing your right arm down. Also imagine a light balloon is tied to your left arm, which is pulling your left arm up. Imagine what's happening is this heavy weight is bringing your right arm down, and this light balloon is pulling your left arm up in the air. Imagine your right arm going down with this very, very heavy weight. That's right, it's becoming heavier and it's going down. Your right arm is going down with this very, very heavy weight. Your left arm is floating up in the air, slowly moving up. Imagine this is happening. Right arm is coming down and your left arm is going up. Right arm is coming down. That's right. More so, Ashutosh. Your right arm is coming down because the weight is becoming very heavy. Heavier. And your left arm is just floating up in the air. Higher than that. Imagine this is happening. Your left arm is just floating up and your right arm is coming down. Your left arm is floating up, higher than that. Even more. Inch by inch, it's going up. That's right. Going up, moving. There's a whole lot of balloon just pulling it up now. As your right arm is becoming very, very heavy and is coming down. Imagine the distance between the two arms increasing. That's right. Imagine it is increasing. As one arm is coming down, the second arm is going up. It's getting faster now. One going down, second one moving up. That's right. One is down, right arm coming down. His left arm is floating up in the air. Left arm is just higher than that, just moving up as the right arm is becoming so very heavy. It's coming down more and more, more and more. It's more and more. Right arm is coming down more and more as the left arm is just floating up. Higher, Asudesh. Just remember, just imagine that. Going up, left arm floating. Whole bunch of balloons just pulling it up. So very light. Just floating up as your right arm is coming down, becoming so very, very heavy. Oh, it's getting heavier. The weight is just becoming so heavy. It's just dragging your right arm down. As your left arm is just floating up, up in the air. And the distance is increasing between your two arms. The distance is increasing between your two arms. As the right arm is coming down, the left arm is going up. Okay, please open your eyes. That's very good. Thank you. All right. That was a test for him. Now the test for you was listening and observation. Is that correct? Let's see what you listen to and what you observe. What did I say first?
Close your eyes.
Wrong. Wrong. Wrong.
Stretch your arm.
Wrong.
How do I get you?
Wrong. 90% failure rate in listening. I need a volunteer. That was the first thing I said. I said the test starts now. First thing I said, I need a volunteer. What did you observe at that time?
People were very reluctant to
People were very reluctant to do it. You see what I mean? Remember I told you this morning, you paid money to learn something when I'm teaching you, you're not interested. You're looking around, who is going with a volunteer? Amazing, We like to be spectators and not participants. That's the sad part. We don't get more out of life simply because we spend most of our life being spectators and not participants. I invite you to participate in life to get the maximum out of it. That's the sad part. We are spectators, onlookers, passerbys. And then we complain, why don't I get this? Because you never did anything to get it. It's very simple. So you observed that I said I need a volunteer. So at last, he raised his hand. Then what? He came here. What did I tell him? What did I ask him?
You told him to stand facing you.
What should I call you?
What should I call you? That's what I said. Huh? What would you have said? If you were to ask the same question, how would you have phrased it?
What's your name?
What's your name? That's a memorized sentence. You people would have said, what's your name? Most people are not effective communicators because they speak memorized sentences. And people have anticipated, so people listen what they listen. People don't pay attention to what is being said to them. There's a classical story about President Roosevelt, that there was a dinner at the White House, and the protocol was that the president and the first lady will shake hands with their dignitaries, and there'll be a dialogue, so to speak. How do you do, Mr. President? Fine, thank you. How do you do? And then they'll be seated. So when the dignitaries were filing by, shaking hand with President Roosevelt, they said, how do you do, Mr. President? He said, I killed my grandmother yesterday. So he said, thank you very much. I'm fine, Mr. President. Because they are hearing the program dialogue, you see. They're assuming. And when you assume, something happens. When if you split the word, assume, you make an ass of you and me. That's what happens when you assume things. You make an ass of you and me. So they all were seated. Then came an Arab, dignitary. And he said, how did you do, Mr. President? He said, I killed my grandmother yesterday. And he says, Mr. President, I'm sure you had a good reason for it. The only one who paid attention. And I suspect he paid attention because for him English was a foreign language. So he was trying hard to understand what was being said. I know that because when I went to America in '64, I did not speak English. And I was straining my ears every time somebody was saying something. You see? Because I wanted to catch everything that they said.
This is interesting because if I go to buy vegetables or something, and they assume that I don't speak Hindi, which I do.
Right.
And when they see me face to face, ask somebody else, please what is she saying?
What is she saying?
I'm speaking in Hindi.
You speaking Hindi, but they still will listen that she must be speaking English.
But if they, by any chance they're looking the other way, they'll turn around and answer me.
Precisely. Because see, your face puts a barrier. That here is a lady looking foreign, she's a foreigner. I mean, you did not expect it. When I spoke English, and I use words because I, could read and write, and I had a good command of the language, written language. I didn't speak it. I use words which were correct. They say, they think I'm not saying the right word, because they didn't expect me to speak English. And she's absolutely right. And I lived in Montreal, which is a very interesting place, because everybody is a minority there. There are French people, there are Italians, there are Greeks, there are Pakistanis, there are Indians, and there are Chinese, And so you're talking to a Greek to the extent, I tell you something interesting. There's a Greek ghetto in Montreal, and you go in there, I speak Greek. And when you go in there, if a Canadian goes into that restaurant or a store, they will say Xenos, which means he's a foreigner. A Canadian in a Greek store in Montreal is a foreigner. And when you're speaking to the Greeks in English, and if you use one word in Greek, they will instantly register. It will instantly register in their mind. Because they are so tuned to it. Foreigners are more tuned to these other languages than the native speakers. So here, when I said, what you will generally say, what's your name? People spoke, and you are not effective as a communicator if you are not. It is generally because you speak programmed sentences when your brain is on automatic pilot. You speak memorized sentences. Your dialogues carry on themselves without you, basically. You've learned a whole lot of sentences throughout your life which you keep on repeating. No thought goes into it. The difference between a good communicator and a bad one is not what they say. The distinction is a good communicator anticipates what the effect will be on the listener. Bad communicator does not have the foggiest idea of what the effect will be. And as a matter of fact, he's surprised when he notices the effect. How did that happen, you think?